You are listening to Her Time to Retire, a podcast dedicated to helping women gain the knowledge, confidence, and support they need to achieve financial success and emotional fulfillment when planning for retirement. If you are ready to finally take charge of your financial life, then keep listening. Your hosts are Glenn Price and Jonathan Scott, founders of Keystone Financial Resources in Brentwood, Tennessee. Both men specialize in crafting individualized retirement plans for women and have a passion for helping women discover and achieve their retirement goals. Glenn is a husband and father of 4 who was taught early in life through his relationship with his grandmother how a woman can not only take charge of her own destiny, but also positively influence the lives of her family and friends that surround her. Jonathan, husband and father of 3, attributes his own success to the strong women in his life, including his wife Brooke and his mother Suzanne. Both men together want to help more women live out their dreams in retirement. As always, if you have retirement questions, their phone lines are open at 615-661-9554, or you can visit their website to browse information, view upcoming events, or subscribe to the Her Time to Retire weekly newsletter. Just visit www.keystonefinancialresources.com. Now relax and enjoy the conversation.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Glenn Price, one of the co-owners of Keystone Financial Resources. I want to welcome you to our podcast today. And the purpose of this podcast is really to help women learn how to take control of their finances and their destinies. And I'm here today with Liz Jenkins. And Liz is a certified professional organizer and owner of a Fresh Space in Nashville, Tennessee. She specializes in helping people in their homes or small businesses get organized so they can be more efficient, organized, and productive. And she's been doing this since 2005. In addition, Liz and her amazing team of organizers provide move management services with decluttering, home styling, and full-service unpacking. Creating gorgeous spaces that are also amazing, functional, is what AFS is all about. Well, Liz, I want to welcome you to our podcast. And like I was telling you the other day, we're a full-service financial firm, but Jonathan and I both really have an emphasis and a desire and a passion to help women in their finances. And that's driven by, I think I shared with you a little bit about, had my grandmother and Jonathan's mom. And so we have a lot of clients here that are females. They're either widowed, they're single, they're divorced. And we wanted to do this podcast so that we could bring things to them that weren't always related to financial planning, but things in their life that would help them to improve the quality of their life. And so we're excited. We're excited that you agreed to be with us today. And so in our conversation that we had, I think it was earlier this week, we were talking about transitions. Why don't you take just a moment before we jump into that and tell us a little bit about how you got started and how you got about your company and where you're at today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's interesting because as you were talking, the bulk of our clients are also women. And we have a lot of clients who have also been widowed or divorced, or, well, like in my case, I'm going to be an empty nester soon. And we have a lot of people that are moving or if it just had a lot of things going on in their lives. And women tend to be the ones that manage most of it, at least in our experience. Not always, but in a lot of families. And so when you have people that are dealing with so many things coming at them, there can be a bit of overload and overwhelm. And so that's a lot of times where we come in to help people move forward and get through those things. And sometimes it can be just dealing with the physical stuff. Sometimes it's dealing with the emotional things. So our goal in our company is to really, ideally very quickly and efficiently, but also very compassionately help people get through those transitions. So it started out with just me back in 2005. My daughter was in Montessori school and my husband had a full-time job. And so I was looking for something as we had moved here that I could do part-time. And when I found out that organizing was an actual business, and I was like, oh, this is totally made for me because I'm always the person who organized everything. You want a fundraiser? I can handle that. You need your closet organized? I can do that. So it was a really good fit. And now there's about 15 of us. I've got a good sized team. We can manage very large projects, but like last week we did a divorced single mom and her teenage daughter in a small condo. And we've done 10,000 square foot homes, working with interior designers, and we've done people who have had spouses pass away or have physical handicaps or just have moved and both of them have to go back to work. So all different kinds of people are a good fit for us when we're able to really see what they have going on, figure out the best way to move them forward, and then we can implement that and really ideally make a big difference in their lives.
Well, you mentioned when a spouse loses a loved one, just in the last week and a half, a dear friend of mine suddenly passed away, and he was in his late 60s. It was unexpected, and he's been a very successful businessman, and he's just got a lot of 2 companies and a lot of things going on, and I just see the of course the grief from his wife, his spouse, but now with all the stuff that's left, like how do you work through that? So, like, what do you guys do? Because I'm sure I heard you mention that, you got the emotional part of that situation, and then you've got the physical and mental part that goes along with, what do I do with all this stuff today, right? So maybe let's talk about that for a minute and kind of what that process and how you guys help families navigate that.
Well, there's a couple of things, and I was giving this a lot of thought since we talked earlier in the week, and a couple of things that I really want people to do prior, if possible. Mm-hmm. And one of those things is having people look at their digital life. And this comes, one of the things that a lot of people don't think about when, I don't want to think about my own mortality. I'm in my 50s, so is my husband. We have a teenage daughter, and I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of, when we pass on, what's going to happen to our Facebook page and who's going to be able to access all of our bank accounts and all of that kind of stuff. So one of the things that we do really encourage people at any point when we're working with them from an organizing standpoint is to really think about their online life, because that's where so much of what we have lives. And one of the things that I see a lot with our clients is it's just kind of this free for all, especially people who aren't super comfortable on the computer, but yet that's where everything lives. So making sure that in some form or fashion, everything is fairly tidy. Like, we use an app called LastPass, which is a password saver, where you have one complicated password that only you know, but it saves all of your passwords. And then most of the digital apps will have some sort of legacy contact. And then there's also sites out there that can manage your digital legacy. So that's one thing that people can really focus on now. It's not that hard. It's just a matter of pulling it together, including making sure that any of your documents that you have online are organized in a way. And we really encourage people, if they're setting up a digital filing system, to make sure that it mimics as much as possible their physical filing system, just to make it as consistent as possible. So that's one component that we do talk about. Another component is making sure that their papers are in order. And I use the word papers kind of loosely, because papers to me can sometimes be a digital document or a physical document. I'm a big fan of scanning all my documents and then putting them online, like in my computer or whatever. But right. The physical documents, a lot of people prefer to have the physical ones. And having all those papers in order, I can't tell you how many clients we go and work with that just have boxes and bankers boxes after bankers boxes just full of papers. And some of it's junk mail, some of it's wills and trusts, some of it's their kids' papers and grades. So it's a matter of going through all of those, ideally ahead of time. It can definitely be done after, but it's really hard once people are trying to move, or they're getting divorced, or somebody has passed on. Dealing with all of those papers afterwards can be very challenging. So a lot of times people who are looking to a transition, or they see one coming down the line, or at any stage, but papers is a huge part of what we deal with as organizers. A lot of it is editing through the papers, figuring out what's important to keep, what you can shred, what might be good to scan, all of that, and then pulling that all together, creating those filing systems for them so that it's really easy to find what they need. And then we also encourage people to separate out their papers into more of an archive section. And sometimes it could be a filing cabinet. I'm a big fan of portable file bins because they're so much easier to move around. You can store them in a closet, in an attic, and then you can group them. So maybe you have one bin that's all medical and financial, and you have one bin that's all your household things. And you don't need to have your mortgage statements on your desk. There's so many things that can just get put away that you need to keep, but you don't need access to. And then once you've got everything archived, then you can focus on your more active files, which are things like your current year's taxes, your vet bills and vet records, your kids' medical records, your anything that you have that's current that you need to access now, your vital documents like your passport and social security cards and things like that. So you've got those two different categories. So papers is a big chunk of it too. And we do a lot of that in estate work as well. And then the big part is what you mentioned, which is the physical stuff. And that's just all the stuff that's in somebody's house that people need to deal with. And so like for your friend, and I'm so sorry to hear about that, your friend is probably having to deal with both of the things I just mentioned and all of the things like the clothing, and if she's going to downsize, what's going to happen to the furniture or the things in the garage. And those are the kinds of things when we do work with people, especially like before they're going to move, or if we are dealing with an estate, is when we come in, the nice thing about having somebody like us come in is that we're not emotionally attached to any of the things that are in there. And what we'll do, and this is what people can do themselves too, if they've got family members or their church family or whoever they have that wants to come do it, they don't have to hire somebody. But the process looks like we always bring in folding tables and bins to sort into. We just use shoe boxes or cardboard boxes. We use plastic ones, but you can use cardboard or whatever you have, empty boxes with sticky notes on them. And then separating out into the categories of the things that we're finding. So when we've done estates where there's nobody there, and then the house is empty, the people are gone, and the heirs are waiting, but they're confronted with this whole house full of stuff, we'll just lay everything out, go through every drawer, every handbag, every pocket, every cabinet. People put things in all kinds of strange places. And so you never know what's going to be there. And so we're really looking for the things that are really important in terms of memory, things like jewelry, things like handwritten letters, things like, money and checks and things that were important to the family pieces. And then once it's all laid out, then it's a little easier for people to make the decisions about who's getting what and what goes where. And there are apps that people use. There's one called FairSplit, FairSplit, and a lot of estate professionals or organizers use that. It's a way that things can be divided among family, and then everybody can see it and all the information goes in there. We've also used an app called Airtable, which is an app that we use it a lot when we do inventories for people who are moving or doing renovations, so we can identify what's where. And then you can just move things from page to page, and you can see everything that's in there with a photo and a description. That's going a little bit more intense than a lot of people need. But just in terms of dealing with things in transition, we have found that when people have less stuff and they really know what they have and where it is, the amount of stress and pressure and anxiety it takes off of people is immense.
Is immense. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and we were just talking about when you simplify your life,
Absolutely,
the freedom that comes from that. And I think people don't realize how much weight they're actually carrying. Because in the back of their mind, they know that those things are there, and they've got good intentions. I need to do that, and you said a couple of words that we say a lot here and that are dear to my heart, and that's planning and processes. It's like that planning. It takes time. A lot of folks don't really always know where to start or what to do. That's where we're talking about on our side with clients why it's so important to have a plan. When people go into retirement, they don't if they don't have a plan, it's like, how do you do that, right? And I'll say, if you don't know where you're going, you may not like where you end up. And so the planning process is something that it takes time, but when you do that, it's like the clients of ours that come on board here, and then once they have a written plan, to watch the tension go down, to watch their shoulders drop, and to see how they begin to enjoy their retirement. And so it's this, that planning and having a good process, it applies to what you're talking about here as well, because no one likes to think about their spouse passing away, but we'll say, look, we plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so the more you can think through that and have a plan, the better it can be, as far as how that process goes and the amount of stress that you take on during that process. Because losing a loved one in general is stressful enough. So, when you do that, do you have we talked about a team, what is your approach? Like if you're coming on, let's say that you were to walk into my friend that I mentioned, and maybe some of those things weren't done ahead of time, right? But now it's like, okay, there's so much, it's so overwhelming. If you were walking into her home, like where do you start, and what does that look like?
So, and one point I did want to make, going back a little bit, was just the whole concept of a cluttered space can lead to a cluttered mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of it, when I do go, I always go in and I meet with the client first, just to get a full overview of what's the whole scope of the project, what really needs to happen, and then really identifying what are the things that are urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that urgency is, oh my gosh, I don't know where X, Y, or Z is, and we can't settle the estate, or we can't do this or that or move forward until we find those things. And it could be a title to something, or it's usually that's something in a document form.
Mm-hmm.
And either in usually it's a physical piece of paper. And so often that's an area that we'll start with first, but that's usually one of my first questions is, what are the things that are urgent in terms of time frame or stress level? And we've had some clients that will come in, and the number one thing is, we need to find these documents, we need to find these papers, we need to find whatever. And so that's where we'll start, is what are those things that really are important to them in terms of moving their life forward? Not that they need to get over anything, or that there's any expectation that, oh, I'm not going to be sad anymore. It's more of, how can we help move that process along so that you'll have those documents and those things that you need? Once that's all in play, then we can start looking at the physical items that are in the home. And some people are going to stay, and then some people are going to move. So if she, for example, was planning on maybe moving to a smaller place, then we would start working through the items that are in the home, and being very mindful of that. One of the things that we do a lot for people that this has happened to is just create memory boxes for them, maybe pulling out, pieces of clothing or physical items or memorabilia, and just really honoring those, getting them boxed up in weather tight totes with labels. That way she'll know that everything that is important to her, that was the spouse's, is safe and labeled and tidy. And then we can then address the potential moving process. If she's going to downsize, what do we do with all the things that are in the home? And going through everything, helping her get rid of things that she doesn't want anymore, coordinating getting it to any of the other family members that may want things. So when we've done that, in terms when there's no people there versus a surviving spouse, or we've had situations where we've had to do this where somebody's maybe had a child pass away, and that is honestly the worst. I've personally worked with clients like that and then come home and cried in the shower. And it's extremely difficult because we take on a lot of the emotions. We've been cried on a lot. It's hard. It's a very difficult process, but everyone that's on my team is very empathetic, very hardworking, very compassionate. But it is very difficult. And we can take it as slow or as quickly as somebody wants. We've done things, normally we work a whole day, but sometimes people can only do a few hours at most, and then they're just done mentally. So a lot of it is looking at what's urgent, what kind of time frame are we working on, and what are the things that are the biggest stress for that particular client. We've had some clients that are like, I need all of the clothes to be gone. I need everything out right now. And then we've had some clients that are like, I don't even want to touch that. I don't want to touch any of their clothes. Everything needs to stay there. I'm not ready to deal with that. So it's individualized for each person, but we really do look at, that grid where urgent, important, non-urgent. We approach it in that way because we want to make sure that we can help them in the way that moves things forward, but at a pace that works for them.
For sure.
So being there as a resource. And our team includes, we bring in people from other places. We might bring in movers and packers. We might bring in cleaners. We might bring in our person on our team that sells things for people. We might bring in an appraiser. We might bring in, just different people that we've worked with that they may need, and then help coordinate those aspects. Like we have a handyman on our team. So he'll come in, and if they need to sell the house, he'll come in and fix things and maybe paint some things. So whatever they need, we try to be a resource to help that. And we try to get everything in writing so that they have a plan and they know who's coming and what needs to happen in the time frame. And we can do as much of it or as little of it as they need. But that's what somebody who's in this position needs, is someone who can really pull that all together, just like you guys do with the finances. Is you're pulling it all together, you're creating a plan with a timeline, and here's what needs to happen when. Same thing in this situation, a plan, a timeline, what needs to happen when, and who's going to do it. And then sometimes if some people are really, they're like, oh, I can handle that, great, here you go, here's what needs to happen. And some people are like, I can't do anything, we can step in and help with those parts that we do on our end. But it's a process.
Well, one of the things that I really liked what you said in our conversation earlier this week is, when you were talking about the team, the time you take to make sure that your team is that they're trained. I'm sure you do background checks, all of that stuff. Talk about what you do in terms of, because in that situation, whether you're single now because, of a death or of a divorce, a lot of women feel vulnerable. We'll have women, come in here after, either one of those situations are going on, and we get a lot of referrals, and they're scared. They're timid. Can I trust you? Who's coming into my home? Because now that's like, letting a stranger in my home. So talk about what you do there to make sure your people are qualified, trained, and that the customer feels safe and secure about who's in their home.
And keep in mind, I can only speak for my own company, but that's extremely important to me. As I said, I've been doing this since 2005. And when we bring people onto the company, a lot of my team has been with me a very long time, 7-8 years. Everybody on the team's been background checked. Everybody takes classes through the National Association. We do a class on ethics. We do a lot of training on ethics. We actually have a company policy. We don't accept gifts. We don't accept tips. We don't accept your stuff. Our handyman went to a job and the client kept trying to give him this chest, and he's like, we don't take things. She's like, no, I want to. We're like, no. Because it's an ethical slippery slope. And that's one thing I have seen in house cleaning companies or people who maybe don't recognize that that's a concern. But, I've had clients that are like, do we tip them? I'm like, absolutely not. We're a professional service. The example that I give to my team is if I'm working in a client's closet and we happen to be the same size and I really like her clothes, well, unconsciously, I might encourage her to get rid of something that I like. And then, if she's getting rid of it, I guess I could have that. Well, and you may not realize it, but there is definitely a concern. And so this is something that we talk about a lot in the company about, we when we donate things, we photo document every single thing that's being donated. And then we donate it, and then we have the receipt, and we send them the photos and the receipt. Every single thing that gets sold gets photo documented. Here's the person who's selling it. Here's all the contractual agreement. We don't get in the middle of the money. It all goes in that level. So when we bring people on, even when we're training, we do about a 3-month intro where we make sure that they're a good fit for the team. Even my independent contractors, they have to sign a confidentiality agreement. If you'll notice, even on our Instagram, we never talk about who our clients are. We don't put anything that's identifying unless the client has specifically said, you need to tag me. But otherwise, we're very confidential. We don't talk about our clients to anyone. We've literally been at people's homes and had neighbors come by and ask us questions. And we don't, unless the client wants to talk about what's happening. We've actually worked with family members who didn't know we were working with each other, or best friends who didn't even know that we were working with them until they like happened to be together and they'd mention it. And they're like, oh, well, we're working with them. How come I didn't know that? Because we don't talk about our clients. We'll go in and see pictures and I'm like, I know who those people are, or a mother and a daughter, and we don't say anything. So we make a very, very concerted effort to make sure that we are ethical, that we are honest. It's extremely important to me. In fact, it's one of the core principles in our company is that level of trust. And, we talk about it all the time in the team. That's one of my number one issues that I have. And we've had experiences with people in other companies who have, I know that they take things, and I don't want to say that, oh, you're a terrible person, but I recognize the issues that can arise from that. There is a line there between professionalism and stepping too far into that friendship zone, which is a little bit of a different world. And so we have to really walk that line carefully because we're there to help the client. We're not there to take advantage of the client.
Exactly. Well, we here at Keystone believe in the team approach. We have a great team of people here, and there was many years that, people would come in and they'd say, hey, I need a good estate planning attorney. And we would maybe give some referrals and send them out, but we never really knew what happened. Or we've had calls back and, hey, this guy charged me, way over what he should have charged me, and they're unsatisfied. So that's when, Jonathan and I said, you know what, we want to have a team of people that we know that share the same core values that we share. I want to be able to break bread with that person and know who they are, and have those same people are the same people that are preparing my estate planning. And so I get to experience that piece and know exactly how they do things, so that when I recommend someone, number one, I know that they're getting the best service possible, but they're also, they're not paying too much and they're not getting gouged in any way, and
right.
That everything is done and it's done right. And that way, when like for us, when a plan is done on the initial front end, now it's just the beginning of monitoring that plan, but as we're building and constructing that plan, we want to know that all the pieces are stable and each person is going to be able to be counted on. I'll tell you a quick story. Jonathan and I had a client they had a son over in Iraq. And there was a terrible accident, and he nearly died. He made it home, and so we had an opportunity to sit down with him. And what happened is when we were talking, we said, "Tell us what happened." He said, my job was to get up every day and go out and do a surveillance of where we were going and make sure that everything was safe. And then I come back and report to the platoon and to our team, and so. This particular morning, he said, the only thing that was different is he said, I put a little scripture in my helmet. And when I went out, I walked about 30 yards and I was scanning and I took a step and I heard a click and I knew that it wasn't good. And he said, the next thing I remember, I woke up and I'm in a hospital, but they said it blew my right ear completely off my head. Now at that point, Jonathan and I are with him and his ear was intact. We're like, wait a minute, stop for a second. Tell us about that. I mean, your ear is intact. He said, yes. He said, one of the team members, they found my ear, they taped it to my chest, And then when they sent me back to Germany for surgery, they were able to put it back on, and I have 100% hearing today. And we're like, wait a minute, how in the world would a team member know to go looking under a bush when there's landmines, to find your ear? And he looked at us like like a cow looking at a new gate, as we say here in the South. He said, we're trained for that. That's what we're trained to do. We train our whole lives for that moment. So when there's a crisis, we know exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I know that really changed the whole culture of our company, because we came back and said to our team, we said, look, this is who we are to our clients. And we're a team of people that they've hired to help them through. And when there's a crisis, we're going to know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And so it's like, even with you, I mean, I love the fact that you take the time to put in to train. The people who you're working with, and the kind of job that they're going to do, because you've taught them what to do and how to do it, and they'll know what to do, because that's a crisis for that individual, in their home. If they've lost a spouse or they've gone through a divorce, and like you said, there's a lot of emotion there. So
every single one of our clients has that level of anxiety about their situation. And
yes.
It's funny, because I've had clients that are like, oh my gosh, it's out of control, it's horrible. And I walk in and there's like a couple of cluttered cabinets and a few things on the counter. And but that to them is super stressful. And I've had some clients that you can barely have a path that you can walk through. And that to them is kind of stressful, but not as bad. So everybody has a different level of tolerance. But I love that you're talking about company culture, because that to me is so important. And that's actually why I don't hire people right away now. I used to, like when I first started, I'd be like, oh, want to come work for my company? And now I'm like, yeah, we're going to give you 3 months and see how you fit with the company, because my core team has a definite culture. And we know how everybody is and how they work. Not that everybody's perfect, but everybody has there's a commonality that I look for and that we've cultivated. And I didn't even realize that we had created this culture. And we were having a team meeting, and somebody had brought up this concept. And I said, well, I don't really feel like I've done. They're like, no, we really have, but it's us that have created it. So when people come in, you can kind of tell pretty quickly, are they going to fit that culture? And it's a culture of, and I bring it up right at the beginning, we don't talk about our teammates in a negative fashion behind their backs. There is no gossiping. There is no negative talk. We don't say anything negative about our clients. We will never, I will smack somebody down, not literally, but then criticize, like if they're like, if they act critical about a client. Not our clients are stressed. Sometimes they can snap. Sometimes they can act angry. Sometimes they can be sad. But our approach is, and this is how everyone has to be, our approach is we are here to help. And if sometimes you might get frustrated or angry, that's part of dealing with that. Understanding that it's not us, it's the circumstances. And our job is to help people work through that. And so when I look at that culture, which I'm hearing you say so much, which is so important to us as well, is who are those people that we're letting into our lives? And how are they going to help make my life better? We're not there to be a stress for them. We're there to make their lives better, as you are as well in your company. And so when we talk to people, I'm not about how much money can I make in my company working for you. I'm more about what can we do on our end. And if we're not the right people, then who are those right people? I just referred a job yesterday to Sarah, actually, that you had on recently, because it was somebody who had a person in their family with some ADD and some other issues, and they needed really one-on-one more coaching. And for me, that's not necessarily what we do. And could I have taken the job? Probably. Would we have been doing the best service for that client? Probably not. And so it was more of a client that was a better fit for her. And sometimes we bring in other people that are better fits, just depending on what their needs are. So I look at it as, we don't really even do that much marketing. We're on Instagram and Facebook and things like that, but most of ours is word of mouth. It's people that refer us. I can count some of our clients back 6 or 7, I call them generations, but you can look and then this person came from that person and that person came from this person. I suspect you guys are probably very similar to us in that way.
Yes, very similar. And I'm just sitting here thinking that while we're in different businesses, we're really not. We're in the business to serve people and to help them. We just happen to work specifically with their finances, and you help them, organize their life and declutter and transition. But what's so important is, like, what I love about what you're saying is just, making sure that everybody that steps into, as far as a team member of yours that steps into a home, that there's a consistency there. That, if they were to meet you, the owner, and the, you're passionate about what you do, they're gonna get a certain feeling. And the same with Jonathan and I. If we're out doing an event, and they meet us and they see the passion that motivates us to do what we do. I think about my grandmother. I've got a picture of the barn. I usually have the client sit across the table, and behind them is a picture of that barn and where I grew up. And my grandfather passed away at an early, before his time, and it wasn't expected, and it changed our whole family. And so that had a big influence on me in terms of why I do what I do today, because I watched my grandmother struggle. I watched everything change for her. I watched this woman who was so confident and certain of everything. I mean, I thought she was made of steel, but she had a hands as tender and a heart as tender as anybody I ever met. But I watched that change because she wasn't prepared. She hadn't done the planning for that incident. She wasn't expecting to lose Pa when she lost Pa. And so I see that picture, and it's a reminder for me of why I do what I do, because it had such a big influence on me and me choosing to go into this field. And when I'm sitting across the table from a lady that's maybe she's lost a spouse or she's gone through a divorce, it's like I see that, and it reminds me of Nana. And it reminds me of why I do what I do, and making sure that, that they're prepared and they're getting the very best. And I want, once they leave, my office, and now they're working with customer service, somebody on our team here, I want them to feel that same passion, that same warmth, that same level of care, that same value that they feel when they're sitting across the table from me. And so I love that piece. And in fact, I would love for you to be a part of our team, meaning that, hey, if I've got clients that are making these transitions, and I want to know that they're working with Liz Jenkins in your company, because after, just talking with you and spending time with you, I know the level of care that they're going to get. And it's going to be consistent with what I try to provide them when they're here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And like I said, we're not perfect. We have definitely had situations that haven't gone the way we want them to go, and we just do the best that we can to make it right for anybody. But I would say that 99% of our clients are extremely happy, and we take a lot of pride in that. But we're always looking to how to improve. That's one of the things I think my team is really good at, and myself, is, every job that we do, when we're done, we go back and we look at it and say, all right, what went well, what didn't go well? And, every single job, most of the time, everything goes really great, but then we can look and say, oh, here's something that we could streamline. Or one of the things we started doing recently is we do a lot of like pantries, and we do a lot of unpacks for clients that are moving and getting them all set up. And so we've started offering custom vinyl labels for clients. And that's our little parting. So one of my team makes them and goes at no charge to the client, and we go and apply them. And I can't tell you how many clients we've made so happy with that, because if you go to buy those labels, they're like $3 a piece if you just go buy them, and they're not that easy to apply. And one of our team members, she's become our Cricut queen. It's called a Cricut. It makes the labels, and she's become our Cricut queen, and she goes and installs the labels for everybody. But it's one of those things that, yes, does it cost me a little, but the look on people's faces when we do it, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I never thought I'd have anything that would look like that. Or, when we get through a space, that every time somebody texts me, like I had 3 people yesterday, clients who had texted me and said, oh my gosh, everything's great. And I always share that with the team. We use a project management app, and I'll go in and I'll screenshot and I'll say, oh, so-and-so is super happy. Here's their feedback. But I think a lot of that is just really just looking at how we can always do the best that we can for each person, and how can we improve and what can we do better. But I mean, honestly, after 15 years, I still get super excited every time I get a prospective new client and I can go see how we can help them and what we can do. And I try to make sure that my team has that same level of enthusiasm. And it's an awesome business to be in.
Well, ladies, if you're out there listening, for those of you that are listening, if you've found yourself in a place where you're overwhelmed, maybe you've gone through a divorce, maybe you're a single mom and you're working from home and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I manage the chaos with this? Or even if you've got parents, I know that you and I talked about that, Liz, the other day, but if you've got parents that that you're going to have to be responsible to take over that if something happens to them. Liz Jenkins and her company, A Fresh Start, is certainly a company that you're going to want to reach out to and talk to. Liz, you're the best way to get in touch with you if our listeners are saying, hey, everything that you're saying I need help with right now. How would they go about finding you, engaging your team? Tell us a little about that before we sign off here.
They can just go to the website, which is afreshspace.com. The letter A, the word fresh, Fresh, and the word space, space.com. I realized I had to spell that out when somebody tried to do afresh and then put a space, and it didn't work. We're also on Instagram at A Fresh Space, and we post lots of pretty pictures and a lot of organizing tips. I'm really big on that. And we'll just post a picture and then we'll talk about why it worked and what we did. And that is really good. We get a lot of engagement on that. And we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest. But Instagram's kind of our main, because it's really fun to put nice pictures. And from the website, they can email me or they can message me via Instagram or Facebook.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you so much for being on the show today. I love your heart. I love your passion in what you do. And so I think the folks that were listening got a lot out of this, and maybe we can have you on our show again, because there's more things that we could have talked about. We're just kind of scratching the surface. So I want to thank everyone out there who's been listening. And again, thanks to you, Liz. I hope you guys have a great day. And as always, you can reach us if you need to contact us here at Keystone. You can contact us at keystonefinancialresources.com. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Her Time to Retire with Glenn Price and Jonathan Scott. Glenn and Jonathan would love to talk to you and answer any of your retirement questions. All listeners can take advantage of a free 15-minute consultation with Glenn and Jonathan, whether via a phone call, Zoom meeting, or in person. You can schedule your consultation by calling 615-661-9554 or by visiting our website at www.keystonefinancialresources.com. Thanks for listening. The opinions expressed by Keystone Financial Resources and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, LLC, or BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Keystone Financial Resources are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM, but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.